Okay, so I just watched the credits roll for Monster Hunter Wilds. I streamed the whole playthrough live here on YouTube. The body's up for that if you are interested. I thought I would talk and give my first impressions on the game, what I think so far, and the criticisms I have, because there are a couple. I'm going to keep all of the gameplay and my general thoughts spoiler free. However, a little later on I will share a bit more information on the end of low rank and some kind of systems that have begun to be implemented there, which I would classify as spoilers if you haven't reached them yet. I will give a warning when I'm about to talk about them, but I'll leave them in the latter half of the video, so don't worry about spoilers here. So first things first, my general thoughts on the game is I am so overwhelmingly happy with how the game has turned out. I didn't get an early access copy, so this has been my first true hands-on with the final product, and it's so good. The world is beautiful and amazing. All the different zones have so much personality, flair and culture. The monster design is amazing, especially with the intricate movesets they have. And we will touch on difficulty in a bit, but there's a couple of things I want to touch on first. So Monster Hunter Wilds has took a very new direction for the franchise in terms of its story. The game's story and its plot is absolutely one of the core focuses of the low rank experience. There is plenty of character development, plot, background lore, etc. They truly did execute it really well, and for the first time in my Monster Hunter experience, I actually cared about the characters. Of course, there's a couple tropey, annoying characters spread into the mix, a bit of bad dialogue here and there, but overall it's actually a very, very interesting concept, and I'm sure it's going to continue developing as I move forward into high rank. My main criticism of the story, however, and bluntly speaking, this is my main criticism of the game itself, it truly feels like a on-the-rails experience. What I mean by that is you don't actually have that much liberty to go explore of your own will, to move where you want to fight when you want to. You'll spend a lot of time in cutscenes and player dialogue. However, sections interspersed in between, you do technically have control of your character, but typically you're not allowed to move around or the camera's fixed. You're forced to look in a certain direction, and it makes the game feel a lot more linear than I personally think it should be. In previous Monster Hunter games, the story experience is very much so, go fight 5 different monsters, come back to town, there's a bit of dialogue, then you go fight the big boss. And the cycle just repeats over and over. In Wilds, every single thing is story. From the moment you beat the previous monster all the way up until you fight the next, it's cutscenes, it's dialogue, it's zero control of your character. And there are some sections where you do have the liberty to go explore at your own will and discretion, but because most monsters are unlocked via the story, you won't run into anything just out in the wild until you've done the relevant quests. And the reason I have so much criticism for this is because the Capcom team did such an amazing job at creating an open, expansive world that I would have loved to spend the majority of my time just exploring and fighting whatever I found. Now, to their defense, as much as I do feel that way about the story, all in all I think it did contribute to the success of the story. It almost forces you to spend time with the other characters, learn more about them and their history, so that you ultimately end up rooting for them later on. I made a comment during my stream that this was maybe the first time I actually cared about the characters. And not only that, it also gives the hunter you control personality as well. So while I would like changes in this aspect, I don't think it was all for nothing. But less about that, let's talk more about the gameplay experience. So as we know from the beta, fundamental gameplay in Wilds is amazing as it's a perfect mix between Rise and World in combat. What was uncertain, however, were things pertaining around the difficulty, monster variety and things of that nature. Prior to the release of Wilds, I got a bit nervous because a lot of the reviews were stating the game felt too easy. Luckily, this is not the case. A viewer mentioned in my stream, and I'm not sure the validity of this, that apparently the day one patch had some adjustments in this area which may have been the root cause of the fix. However, as a relatively decent Monster Hunter player, I want to let new players or casual players know this game will give you more than enough challenge. In the beginning of my playthrough, I was a bit anxious that the game may have been too easy, as I was getting through the early monsters within 4 to 5 minutes. Part of this is natural for low rank and you should expect an easier time through it, but as you progress later and later on, things do ramp up and it's actually some pretty challenging content already. And this is just low rank, by the way. I've already spoke to a couple creators personally and they have agreed that the difficulty is in a really good place. And again, there is a system that I want to touch on that further adds on this area, but I'll leave that in the back end so you don't get spoiled. There's plenty of intricate movesets, monsters interact with their environment in really cool ways, and some of them hit pretty hard. My first cart was actually to Ufduna. I was playing kind of cocky and arrogant and wasn't healing, because at that point I hadn't actually used the Mega Potion. but when it hits you with that body slam, if you haven't got latest armor upgraded, it does hurt. But the other issue I had going in was we wasn't sure on monster variety. A lot of monsters had already been made clear that they were in the game through previous trailers or gameplay showcases. So launching the game this morning, I wasn't too sure if there was going to be enough to fill my desire. And I'm not sure if it's the way the story paces and spreads them out, or if it's due to how highly unique each monster is from one to another, but not once did I find myself bored or feel like the diversity was lacking. This is something I will need to comment way more on once I reach the end of high rank, because there's still monsters to be introduced to me as I play through, and as we reach the endgame grinding phase, that's when the monster pool will really become apparent to us. But for purely the progression of low rank, it's really good. And while we're on the subject, the armor and weapons of these guys is incredible. Other than 5th gen, the only game I've played is Monster Hunter GU, that I was actually kind of used to the slap-on weapon designs and things of that nature, but Capcom have took things to another level. Again, I don't want to spoil you with some of the things you can expect later on, so I'll hold off on showing you. But what I will say is every time you beat a monster, go to the forge, check what its armor set and weapon looks like. You won't be disappointed. However, sort of pertaining to monsters, but it also kind of links back into the whole story aspect we were discussing. As amazing as the areas we get to explore are, and as awesome as the monsters are we get to fight, I found the game back and forth from area to area quite a lot. I was expecting that once we got into the Scarlet Forest, we would be there for quite a while, get to explore, fight everything it had to offer before moving on. But multiple areas felt like we get there, we do a little bit of story, fight 2 monsters, and then we're back in the Windswood Plains. I'm sort of echoing what I said earlier about wanting the liberty to explore of my own accord, opposed to being fixed into this rollercoaster ride that's going somewhere objective. But that did feel sort of disappointing to me that once we've unlocked a couple of monsters, it didn't feel like it was much purposeful to go back out into that environment to hunt them over and over. I did make an exception for one monster, which is coming up in the spoiler section a bit later on. But those truly are my only real criticism so far. I've actively been asking my chat for any issues they may have been having, and nothing's really come up yet. I'm interested in seeing how my thoughts change as I go through high rank. One thing that may still be an issue for people, of course, is performance. I can only speak on behalf of myself, the content creators I've spoken to, and viewers in my chat, but from all of those sources so far, the game is running so well. At the very least, the performance has noticeably improved since the beta. Bearing in mind I've been streaming and recording simultaneously while playing the game on max settings and ray tracing, I have been getting over a stable 150 FPS all day long. I've been made aware that some users are still having issues with performance. I'd be really interested to hear what that experience has been like for you in the comment section down below. I did comment on my previous video that we would have to discuss performance more on launch, so before I do any further reviews and deep dives into Wilds as a whole, I would really value your perspective on that area. I don't want to lock myself into an echo chamber of just positivity, however that has been the only input I've received so far. Simultaneously with the visuals and graphics, I touched on it earlier, however it is so good looking. For me, Wilds looks like a complete step up to what we saw in World and Iceborne, and the weather systems assisting with the contrast of these areas makes them so much more vibrant and lush as it transitions from one effect to another. Again, it's a subjective area and many of you did have issues with this in the beta. Once again, I would value your input on how the game looks now we're in the full product. Okay, now I'm going to talk about a system in the game that you may classify as spoilers. This system is introduced later on in low rank, so if you don't want to hear about it, click away from the video now. And thanks for watching, by the way. Okay, have they gone? Perfect. Let's talk about Guardian monsters. Naturally, so far I've only encountered a couple of these guys, my personal favourite being Rathalos. This system was such a nice surprise. Originally from the trailers we were shown, I was under the impression that this was the frenzy system that was in previous titles. Finding out it was in fact a brand new system, unique to Wilds, was really nice to see. Essentially, monsters we know and love are returning into Wilds, however now they have a brand new moveset, powered up attacks, new armor, appearances, everything. And I love that. It's a perfect way we can reuse old content and still have them feel fresh. while simultaneously not overdoing it and then becoming these really annoying things to deal with. They felt like a really good natural progression part of the game in terms of scale and difficulty. And the reason I'm so excited for this system is the possibilities are pretty much endless. You can take any old monster from previous titles, throw them into Wilds as a Guardian version, and hypothetically we should now have a new monster that none of us are used to playing, and it's a fresh experience. Now I wouldn't want the team to get too lazy and only introduce these, but if I was you, I would expect as we move into high rank to see more of these, and as we reach Event Quest 2 I suspect we'll get some new faces. Again, I'll have to comment more on that as I reach the end of high rank, but for now I am so happy with the game, as you can probably tell from my voice, and I just want to get this video done so I can go back to playing. Please let me know your feedback and first impressions of the game so far. I would love to hear your feedback so I can use this as I make more videos going forward. And if you haven't already, feel free to check out the previous live stream VOD and check now to see if I'm streaming currently. I plan on streaming as much as possible over the next week. Thanks for watching.